Welcome back to the Hubscale Podcast, the podcast where we dive into the minds of security leaders all around the world. This week we have Luigi Lenguito, CEO of BforeAI. Thanks for joining us, Luigi. How are you?
Hi, Tom. I'm very well, and thanks for having me. Really excited about this conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. So to begin with, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming a founder and CEO of BforeAI?
Definitely an improbable journey. So I'm very passionate about computers. I was 4 years old. My father put me in front of the first IBM PC in the south of Italy. I still use the keyboard of that computer 43 years later with a pack of adapters. And it tells you, how much time I spend in front of computers. That led me 25 years ago to join Dell in France, where I stayed for 18 years. Big, school of life and school of knowledge for me. So I've done probably more than 20 different jobs in those 18 years, anything from marketing to sales to, of course, technical. I started in tech support, product development, product management, merger and acquisitions, vice president of sales. And then in 2017, I was celebrating my 40 years old. I always dreamed to retire, and so that's what I did. I went back for my other passion is speed. I used to be a Formula 3 driver when I was a kid. So I went literally back on track for a couple of years, just enjoying my fast cars on all the circuits in Europe. And I came to UK as well. I did, Brands Hatch and Silverstone, Outland Park, Donington Park, and Castle Combe and all the others. And then anyway, as I was doing all of these, I got the itch to create a company. Why in cyber? Because when I was doing M&A, that was clearly the market of the future.
Sure.
Plus, kind of felt like there was an opportunity there as the market was starting to go very reactive. This is the early days of detection and response, assuming breach. And my thought was this is going to be full reactive very soon. So people will seek for an alternative more before the attack. That's the name of the company. And then I was lucky to meet my two co-founders at the research program where this technology that we use in BforeAI was being researched for a number of years. And I got in love with the idea, got inspired by a movie, Minority Report. We'll talk about that more in a moment. And as they say, the rest is history. So now it's nearly 5 years in the journey,
Sure.
and company's growing, and we have great customers. We're protecting millions and millions of users across the globe. So very happy about that.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit more about what it is that BforeAI you're doing differently and what problem you're solving.
So the BforeAI is born with the idea that we should do more anticipation, but not the classic prevention where you have a broad brush solution that solves for a specific risk, but more what I call preemption, where we identify a future attack and we stop it with a very specific activity. And so today we do what we call predictive and preemptive security. We're able to predict the source of cyber attacks a median 3 weeks before the attack happens. 99% of the time, we get it right. So right that we offer a guarantee. So if we make a mistake and the customer get hit by the attack, we actually refund 10 times the value of the contract. It doesn't ever happen. I don't think it will ever happen, given how reliable is the system. But Munich Re, the largest insurer in the world, back us on this promise that will, obviously is there to kind of guarantee the quality of this prediction. And then once we have done the prediction, we are able to isolate those infrastructure from the rest of internet to avoid victims to be made. So we prevent victim zero, notably in cases of fraud and phishing and impersonation attacks in general. And then we take down those infrastructure preemptively before content and activity started. We call this prediction plus disruption plus preemptive takedown Precrime. Some will probably remember Minority Report, the movie with Tom Cruise from about 20 years ago. That's what gave us the inspiration to build the company. And so today, Precrime is real in cyber anyway. And yesterday, we have telemetry that show we saved in one day 27 million and a half people from fraud and scam.
Wow.
Give you a sense of the kind of the reach that we
Yeah,
have.
the
And we
scale.
probably maybe this week we will do 100 million people saved in a week. That is our next milestone from a tracking perspective.
Awesome. It's so exciting and such an interesting idea. We obviously met at InfoSec Europe a few weeks ago, and we talked about the podcast there, and came up with the idea of basing it around what a CEO is thinking when making an executive hire, which I think is a really good idea, and that's what this podcast is going to focus on from this point onwards, really. So,
Mhm.
to begin with, when you're making an executive hire, Luigi, what are your main priorities?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm a bit of an atypical founder because I've been 18 years in a corporate. So, I've got a lot of training on hiring and executive hiring and so on.
Yeah,
So I have that benefit to
sure.
start with.
I think it adds
But
a
it is,
really interesting nuance to the podcast as well. And I think we're going to come on to this that you've been in a corporate,
mhm.
conglomerate doing executive hiring and then worn that hat in a startup and done executive hiring. So
It
seeing
is
both
different.
sides
I
of the
can tell you
coin.
it's very, very different, but I'll give you
Yeah,
the startup side of the history here, and I can give some delta. The other thing, just to for everyone to position us, we are now Series B company. We raised about $35 million so far.
sure.
The company is fully distributed, so team is across the globe, and we are in that hyper growth kind of journey. We were just talking about one of our largest deal ever, just doubling our ARR recently. Um, so listen, I think three things just to summarize the thing. Obviously you look for many different things, but the first one I look at it as, is this person gonna raise the bar of the whole company? So looking at someone that fill gaps that we have in terms of knowledge, experience, understanding of the market, leadership capability, definitely has to compensate for gaps that I or other people in the team may have, especially, my co-founders and other senior team. So that's definitely the first thing is raising the bar. The second thing is obviously cultural fit. As I said, we are fully distributed. We operate in a very peculiar way, mostly asynchronously.
Mm,
We have a team that is multicultural, distributed across the globe. The company started as a French company, now it's based in the US. Most of our business is in the US. So we have very peculiar, kind of culture that people can check on before AI/join. And so finding someone that match that culture is the most important thing, because this strategic hire, you want them to last, right? Not that create havoc. So that's the second one.
absolutely.
And then the third one is really about potential, right? So again, we are looking in especially in a journey like this one of the hyper growth VC backed company.
Mm,
The company evolve very quickly. Nearly every 3 months is completely different stage of the company in terms of size, in terms of deals, opportunity, in terms of engagement with customers and what have you. And so they need to be someone that have that ability to grow faster than the company grows, because otherwise, you'll be on constant catch up. And so when you put together, raising the bar of the existing team, cultural fit, and then this continuous, fast learning, growing faster than the company, that's why the people that we can hire from an executive standpoint are very specific, very, very rare.
absolutely. In your experience, which of those areas has been the hardest to find or the hardest to pinpoint? Yes, this is the person for us.
The last one by far. I think it takes a special breed of person to work in early stage startup,
Sure.
and even more specific to being a leader, because you're now acting at kind of founder level. So you have that founder mode capability. You need to, either you have already done the journey, for example, we are in the journey from 3 to 10. So either you have done that already. If you have not, you really need to, kind of demonstrate the ingredients to succeed in that. And so it's definitely not a very common profile. Thankfully, it's the fact that we are fully distributed and asynchronous make us a little bit more attractive than other
Sure.
startups. And then we are in a very purposeful industry because we fight the crime, we stop the tax. So it's, you don't come to work to do anything. You're saving people lives. You're helping with avoiding scams and company, going bankrupt and whatnot. So I think, that gives us access to people that maybe others don't have.
Sure.
So far, we had this conversation together. Actually, I've been very pleased with the quality of people we've been able to recruit. The pipeline has always been very, very healthy.
Sure. One of the things that, you know, is becoming a really topical thing to talk about in hiring in general is businesses being remote, or you call it distributed businesses. And I think it's interesting how that's influencing business culture. So as a CEO, how does being a distributed business influence hiring when you're focusing on cultural fit?
Yeah, so first of all, why I use the word distributed versus remote? Remote for me means that you are far away from something, right? An headquarter, the CEO, what have you.
Sure.
Distributed, everybody is equally distant from anybody else. It's a
Mhm.
much more meritocratic, much more same level playing field for everybody. When I was in a large company, one thing that I suffered, I was remote, but in that case, there was a very strong headquarter and headquarter culture. And I suffered this kind of glass ceiling of not working in the headquarter. And I knew that my career was much more difficult to go through the ladder. I would have no access to certain specific job. And,
Mm.
I had a fantastic career. I loved what I did, and I'm very proud of what I achieved. But definitely there was a limitation, let's put it this way, right? And I worked around it. And so in a fully distributed organization, everybody has the same access to the CEO. There is no talk in the water cooler, that kind of drive the conversation. And so that's to me is a more interesting setup. I'm very biased, of course, because we started that way and I did it on purpose. I think from a leadership perspective, when you hire for fully distributed, it's different relationship to management. You
Mm.
lead by engagement, not by presence management. You need to be able to trust others a lot more
Mm.
without them earning your trust. You need to give the trust upfront. You need to be able to have very structured performance conversation because you manage by objectives, not
Sure.
by activities. And so it's overall, I think that the whole skill set is very different. That said, what is good is that a great um, people manager and leader in a fully distributed organization is as good in hybrid or in a fully office setup. Vice versa, doesn't work. You can have a fantastic leader in office that is absolutely crap in a distributed model, and so I'm definitely looking for our case to indication that the only experience shouldn't be, yeah, I did work from home during COVID, right? So that's not a good example of fully distributed capability.
Sure.
So but you need to know what you seek, right? In the interview process, what are the attitudes? What are the kind of the capabilities that they need to show?
Yeah, amazing. I completely agree. You talked earlier about wanting to find, particularly when you're recruiting executives, people that have been on the journey or who are going to almost think like a founder.
Mhm.
I've heard it called like the owner mentality. How do you identify people who have that?
I think it's first of all is an element of passion that you need to feel,
Sure.
and you need to you want to see people caring for what they're doing.
Yeah.
You want to see emotions. You want to see kind of to say the energy, right, in getting stuff done. One of the indicators is if they have a debate with you as a CEO, right? That means that they care, right? It's hard. It's very hard, again, especially if you're the founder and you're the owner. So that's one example. Then, the owner mentality for me is also carefulness about, how we spend money, carefulness about, how we innovate, how we listen to the market, how we build a relationship for the long term with the customer, how we attract people. So it's really more about that, currently nearly no boundary kind of engagement with the company. And then, last but not least, it is, you feel it, and it's kind of a very simple indicator is people that believe more in the equity aspect of their package because they believe in the company, they want to see the company succeed, they want to contribute to it, and they want to see the reward for that contribution. And so it's and this in Europe, unfortunately, is a little less common than elsewhere in the world. So it's harder to find people that really value that component of the package. And it also, but they would be more engaged for cultural perspective and so on. So it's not kind of black and white, but is one of those kind of elements that you can use to kind of find the fit.
Sure, and I think that owner mentality aspect, like you've already said, critical in a startup, isn't it? Startup environment. So that brings us quite nicely onto the next question, which is we already talked about Dell. How does your thinking differ when you're making an executive hire at more of a corporate business rather than when you're at a startup like BforeAI?
I think there is definitely an element of adaptability and speed of adaptability that is critical. In a large corporation, you compensate your gaps with the rest of the organization, right? And the organization, even if it's growing, is not moving, and it's not going to be extremely different in 3 months, right?
Sure.
Maybe in 1 year, but a startup, especially in hyper growth, can be very different in 3 months. Actually, every 3 months, the company is completely different in our case, right? By size, by type of customers, by geographies, and so on. And so you need to really look for that fast learning capability, autonomous learning capability, not seeking guidance, but seeking reinforcement of a decision that they've been taking. I codify these in one of our cultural tenets that's called unless otherwise directed, where I say to my team, when you have decided, when you want to do something, it's most probably right because you have all the elements, definitely more than I do. But let me know that you're taking that decision. So share it on the channel in Slack or whatever. Say, I'm going to do this by this date if I'm not told otherwise.
Sure.
And this comes from a command by negation that is actually a military kind of discipline where the submarine commanders were trained to, when they were a periscope, communicate, and they would say a periscope, I don't know, for like an hour, and they would communicate the next journey and say, okay, I'm going to do that and launch this missile unless I'm otherwise directed. And then there was 30-minute time in which, headquarters could stop them, say, no, no more war, no more missile to launch, or there might be silence because there was war. And if there was silence, then they would carry on with whatever decision they would have or the orders that they had and so on and so forth. So what does this give? It gives you speed because you don't have to constantly ask for permission.
Sure.
It gives you empowerment because you are given the capability to take your own decision. And it enabled the fully distributed, fully asynchronous mode because, I may be on a plane without Wi-Fi and the company doesn't stop waiting for me to land and provide an answer, right? They will continue and so it's more about we assume that most of the people will take the right decision, but we want to have control to avoid they going against the wall or repeat a mistake we may have done before, rather than the other way around. We have lack of trust in the team, so we need to stay on top of them all the time, right? And that's definitely not my philosophy of management.
Sure. One thing that I think is an interesting element about particularly a startup, as a founder, how does your thinking differ if you're hiring maybe a founding team member to maybe a replacement at executive level?
First of all, it's very different because when you are hiring a founding team member, there is probably even not a company yet. so it's more tied on beliefs and on alignment of vision,
Sure.
and potentially on kind of just human kind of likeness, because that you're going into a quite challenging time ahead, and so you want to do it with someone that you can count on, that it'll be a fun also element to be part of the same journey and so on.
Yeah.
It is very different when the company is at 4 or 5 years at a stage of growing like us, in which now you're looking for, as I said, enriching the company with new capabilities, bringing in knowledge and networks that make us stronger. All these things at the very beginning are absolutely great if you have them, but it's so much nice to have that that's definitely not the criteria on which you start. At the beginning is more about who's gonna be ready to eat glass, right? Rather than are you gonna be flying on a jet to the customer the next day, right? So that's a different kind of mindset.
Yeah, mindset was the word I was thinking of there. Absolutely. One question that I think is really interesting, and I think will be super helpful for, you know, maybe founders looking to hire their executive team for the first time is there any common criteria that links your successful executive team hires across your career?
Um, Listen, I think the to me one thing that helps is if you really know the culture of your company
Mm,
and you use that as your filter to identify because you find a lot of great people with great careers, fantastic capabilities, knowledge, networks. The primary filter to me has to be the culture. But if you haven't codified the culture, if you haven't don't really understand what is the culture of the company, then you cannot do that. And
sure.
then it become a much higher, there's going to be much higher likelihood that you fail in that hiring. So my recommendation, even at very early stage, I think we codified our culture. We were probably 3 months old as a company.
Right.
We were very lucky that the accelerator we were part of at the time kind of put us through this specific part of the program, and we took it seriously as well.
Mm,
Um, I think that for me is a truly defining activity, one where at the beginning you really need to take it seriously and put the time on and make sure it's a shared exercise with the other co-founders, because then you're not going to change it. It's not going to change till you get acquired or you merge into some other thing later, right? So you want to get that right, and then you want to have it very well codified so you can use it during interviews,
sure.
and you can build questions, you can seek for experiences that help you validate if that person fit in the cultural mold. And then once that's true, then you can look and stack rank on capabilities and experiences and rest.
Sure. So codifying the culture of the company is critical for
Yeah, so
you.
I'll make an example. In our cultural tenets, there's one that is think worldwide, that is about not limiting yourself to the way you are, but think about how the others are and bring your diversity into the conversation, because we are all diverse, especially in a multicultural company like ours. And this multicultural thing can become hampering our business, because
Sure.
obviously it is more difficult communicating in a multicultural world than in a homogeneous one. But it can also be our superpower, where we
Mm,
understand better customer across the globe, where we understand better trends, where we can innovate more because we have different perspectives. And so how you hire based on that is very different than, say, another company that may not have that as a cultural tenets, where they're fine to hire around their office in a 30-kilometer radius, and they're all more or less related people anyway. And so it's completely different mindset that you're seeking.
absolutely. Um, no, completely agree. That's really interesting. What when you've made a bad executive hire, what are the signs?
First, it was rushed, right? So we let the time define the calendar, and not the finding the right person. Um, it was probably, so let me put it this way. I come to uh, truly appreciate gut feeling. All the hires, not just executive in general,
Mm,
that have gone bad in our company, I knew even before signing the contract that
really?
this was not going to work,
Wow.
and I just didn't listen to me, right? Definitely we have made some serious mistakes, and in all cases I had a doubt, and now I said this to one of my investor leaders. I say, if you have a doubt, you have no doubt.
Mm.
Right? You need to listen to yourself. There is something. It's a very nice book from the guy that wrote the book Think Fast and Slow. The book is called Blink, and it
Right.
basically talks about this kind of sixth sense that we have, where we may have a strength that we don't recognize. It's not logical, but in a blink we can take a decision and we'll be right. Well, I
Sure.
think founders, that blink has to be fit with people that you hire. And so if you think that there is something that you have a doubt, just move on, find somebody else.
Is that the key learn then from your time spent executive hiring? Is that the key thing that you've taken away from
No, I
mistakes and
wouldn't say
things that have gone well?
no, I think it's just a lesson learned by experience. More, listen to your gut more than to your mind,
Sure.
in this case. But I think you cannot summarize in a single kind of key takeaway. It's
Mm.
it's such a complicated matter. But
Absolutely, yeah.
ultimately, I think you have to go to the definition of a company, right? Company started with the concept of people, taking a journey on a boat to go and discover new worlds. And who do you want to bring on a boat is people that, would not abandon the rest of the team in the middle of the ocean when there is a storm, right? So I think that is a good lens to always remind ourselves. And one thing I say often to my team, I say, this is not a family. I will fire people eventually. Company are not families. Companies, to me, are more akin a sports team in a high competitive environment. Think Formula One team, for example, right?
Sure.
And everybody from the janitor to the executive, we are here to win the, global world championship, right? And so as long as you're functional to that winning, then you have a place. Uh, if you don't like the stress because you don't want to work at fast pace, because you don't want to have this constant kind of question about are we delivering what we are delivering, then either you are not the right person for this specific journey, or we should make sure that you are not there in the first place, right? So I think that's to me it's an important lens. Remove this idea of family of the company. There
Mm.
might be companies that are more lifestyle, they can act as families. I'm not discounting it. I'm just saying in our space, VC backed, fast growth,
Sure.
aggressive targets, we are more like in the sports scenario, and so you are looking at a more of engagement for winning
Mm.
than just good staying together. Now you can still have a great environment and not being assholes in the company, right? So I'm not
Yeah,
saying
no,
that
I
you
get
you
your
can
point. I
you
get
can
your
you can
point.
win win world championship and be McLaren, Mercedes with great happiness within the company. So
Yeah, no, I get your point. I think in this space, is there time to build that sort of family way of working? Maybe not, but I totally get your point there. So, um, what you've talked about there, that bad executive hire, the costs of that are significant. How does that affect your decision making?
I think what probably one does not think through it is that an executive obviously staples the culture of the company.
Sure.
The risk is not simply, okay, oh, I made a mistake, wasted 9 months, costed so much money, the pain of the release and whatnot. No, you might actually now have inserted a bad gene
Mm,
within your cultural design.
yeah,
And even when the person is left, that gene may still persist, right? So it's a problematic thing. So the most painful cost for me is are have we kind of created a challenge into our cultural journey? So that's the big thing, and why I'm saying you need to be very careful with the cultural fitness, because
yeah,
of course the closer they are to the culture, the least they can deviate it. And so and you want the contribution from a skill and competency. You don't want necessarily a contribution of improving the culture or changing at this stage, right? Culture may evolve later, but I think the
absolutely.
first 5-10 years, the culture has to be pretty stable to scale. Um, and so, to me, more than an economic cost, is an actual opportunity cost for the future that you may be incurring if you do a bad hire. But then at the end of the day, how they say, hire slow, fire fast, right? I think it's very valid. Just make sure that if you made a mistake, you don't linger around and just take the plunge and cut the person and move on, right? So,
be decisive. Yeah, agreed.
yeah, so here give you another difference between the large corporation and the startup environment. In the corporation, you can invest a lot of time for people to grow. And so if they have a weakness, then maybe it's something that you can tolerate, then you can work with them to do coaching and mentoring and training, and I love that. Right? I'm always believed that everybody has the capability to be a success. Well, in a company in fast growth startup stage, you absolutely have no luxury of people improving on their weaknesses.
Sure.
If their weaknesses are a problem, then it's a problem. You need to move on. As bad as it may seem, it goes kind of against my principle. You cannot invest into improving the weakness. You can reinforce the strengths, absolutely, do it all the time, but you cannot invest in improving the weaknesses, especially if these weaknesses are impacting the business.
Sure.
You need to not hire that person and take another one. So
absolutely, yeah. No, agreed. So kind of brings me quite nicely actually on to my next question, because I think that was a really valuable bit of advice. Is there one key bit of advice you'd pass on to maybe a first-time founder who's looking to make their first executive hire? Is there one thing that you would advise them on?
I would say don't over rely on recommendation or past experiences. You know how the disclaimer in financial document, past trends do not, support future trends or things like that, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think the context of a startup is so different from one another than someone that was successful 3 years ago in a company that looks like exactly like yours may absolutely be a disaster in your company. So you are really fitting for your current scenario. So yes, of course, listen, to reference call and past experiences and whatnot, but it's kind of more as a confirmation bias. So you have to kind of make your perspective. I really like actually a concept on how to take decision that I read a post lately from the CEO of Rubrik, Bhupal, and basically what he say is I don't ask my team for input to then take a decision. I come up with a decision and then I ask them how to improve it.
Yeah, sure.
And there is a difference. It is the difference between the camel being the horse designed by the committee and having a horse and then ensuring that it's one that doesn't die by thirst or something like that, right? so it's very important that you actually make your own opinion, that you know what you're seeking for, and then yes, get all the other feedback to kind of validate that you're not hiring a jerk or something like that.
Sure. And that's a really valuable bit of advice. And, back channels are absolutely critical. But I agree with you that I think it's important that, your decision, if you're doing the hiring, that is the most important. So totally agree with you there. So yeah, that's pretty much brought us to the end of the questions, Luigi, and the end of the time. I've really enjoyed this one. So thank you so much for joining us. I think that's going to be a really valuable episode. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Look forward to the feedback, and I hope people will follow us, and me particularly. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can just search Luigi Lenguito, follow or connect even, and let's continue the conversation. I'm always on there, so very very happy to have engagement there.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Luigi. See you soon.
Bye, Tom.